Hi, my name is Elizabeth Tyson. Welcome to Anthropogenic Impacts on the West Indian Manatee. So I chose this topic because I really love manatees and conservation is very near and dear to my heart. But the reason we need to conserve is because there are so many human-led impacts onto this amazing species. So that is what we're going to dive into today. But before we can talk about the anthropogenic impacts on the West Indian manatee, let's take a step back. What is the West Indian manatee? So the West Indian manatee is a species of saurian that is found in the Atlantic Ocean on the western part. Um, on this map below, all of that area in yellow is where they can be found. They have a pretty wide distribution. They are a migratory species. They migrate for the colder months because they don't do well with cold due to their very low body fat and extremely low metabolism. So they are truly not fat, they're just big boned. Um, but they get all of that weight from being herbivores. They eat 4 to 9% of their body weight in plants each and every day, um, which is a lot of plants considering that most adults are 10 feet long and weigh from 800 to 1,200 pounds, which is quite a lot. Manatees have a really low birth rate and don't reach reproductive maturity until they are 3 to 10 years old. So their birth rate and the amount that they can reproduce is much lower than what we need for all of our anthropogenic impacts. So the first anthropogenic impact is hunting. Hunting was the original cause of decline for the West Indian manatee. They were hunted by indigenous people and colonists for their hide, flesh, and bones. However, this has been illegal for quite some time. It has they have been protected from harm since 1905. There was a law that said if you killed a manatee, you would be fined $500, which is approximately $16,000 in today's money. So it was quite a serious punishment for killing a manatee. Our next impact, and the one we hear about definitely the most, is boating. So, over the last 40 years, watercraft collisions have caused the largest percentage of anthropogenic deaths of West Indian manatees in Florida, which was 25%. So, there's two different ways that a manatee collides with a watercraft. So as you can see in our lovely picture here, this was a manatee that was sliced by a propeller. It creates those long white gashes, which can be fatal. And the other way is just blunt force trauma from the boat impacting the manatee. So there's lots of protections in place, like no wake zones and slow zones for those super fast boats. In our little graph, so manatees can react and do react to boats, but when they are moving fast, they have a hard time adjusting mentally in doing so. So as you can see, we've got like only half of them start moving at 50 meters. So if a boat is going from 50 meters to 0 meters from the manatee in 3 seconds, that's not enough time for the manatee to react. So fast boats, bad vibes. So we know that manatees and boats cause so many collisions, so many manatees die because of this. However, only 21 instances were reported over 1978 to 2006, which is obviously not every single time a manatee died from a collision. So it's vastly underreported, which is not good all around. Next, we've got pollution. Uh, Super fun. So, ingested debris was found in 10 to 15% of all necropsied manatees. It was found in the digestive tract. When an animal ingests pollution, it can be toxic or harmful to the manatee. It can also block up the digestive tract, which leads them to believe they're not hungry, they're only starve themselves. But also, they can be tangled by pollution, primarily fishing gear. Most of this fishing gear was hook and line. 380 manatees from 1997 to 2009 were stranded due to fishing gear entanglement, which was the top reason for rescue. I mean, we used to have the top reason for deaths in boats. This is the top reason for rescues, so a little different. But this is a manatee that has been entangled in a fishing line, as you can see, around its front flipper, so it can cause infection and amputation of the flipper, which can seriously interfere with that manatee's ability to perform normal manatee things like migration and foraging. Next, we have noise pollution. So watercrafts like boats and barges, and then also construction, create a lot of noise above land and in the water, and this can impact the behavior of manatees and create a lot of stress as well. These high noise environments can affect breeding rituals and reproductive success, as well as block manatee communications and foraging habits. So if an area with lots of good seagrass it's so lush, it's great for the manatee, but it's super loud, they might not go there. They might try to find another location that might have less seagrass, and that's not good. High noise levels can also decrease a manatee's ability to detect boat noise. So, they can get hit more often, have impacts more often if it is a high noise environment, in which, like a construction site, there's going to be more boats going to and from. So, yeah. So the last thing I'm going to talk about is cold stress and the anthropogenic impacts on cold stress and warm water situation. This is certainly not the last anthropogenic impact, but another day. So as I mentioned before, manatees have a really low metabolism and a really low body fat, which makes them highly susceptible to the cold. Prolonged exposure to water temperatures below 20 degrees Celsius can result in cold stress syndrome, as seen on this manatee here. So that's not good. It can cause the edges to wear away. It's unpleasant, and it could often causes death. So manatees rely on warm water discharges, like springs. I grew up near Blue Springs State Park, so I always think about that when I think about manatees home during the summer or the winter. But there's only 4 springs in the state of Florida. And there are many more industrial plants. So industrial plants that were built between 1940 and 1970 often release warm water. And there are 10 of those in the state of Florida. You can see our little map down below. So there's also thermal basins, but those are not like an all-winter solution. Manatees can go there, but it doesn't stay warm all winter, so they pretty much have to go find somewhere else, an industrial plant or spring. But the problem with these industrial plants is, as I said, 1940s to 1970s, because after that the Clean Water Act was passed, which meant that no industrial plants could be releasing the amounts of warm water that these previous plants were, which is a good thing. But also that means that these that do are reaching the end of their operating life, because the 1940s was a long time ago. So it is very likely that a lot of them will be retired, and these manatees will have to find elsewhere. If all of the power plants shut down, there's simply not enough space and resources in the naturally occurring springs to have all these manatees. 2 of these power plants have gone through a process called repowering. It is Fort Myers and Fort Lauderdale, but this is extremely expensive, so it is kind of assumed that this process is not going to happen to all of the power plants as they reach the end of their operating life pretty soon. So, yeah. So how are we protecting these manatees from our terrible impacts? So there's lots of legal protections. There's the Marine Mammal Act of 1972, which prohibits any interaction with manatees. Manatees were listed as endangered species from 1967 to 2017. Now they are just threatened, which is very exciting news. Well, it was 5 years ago. It's still exciting. However, a lot more research is needed. Currently, we are going through an unusual mortality event, a UME. It's been happening for like 2 years now, where a lot of the seagrasses are not growing and there's no food for the manatees. So it's fertilizers produce nutrients that run off into the water. The water is over-nutriented, so it creates algae, and then algae blocks the light from getting to the seagrasses. So more research on how we can minimize that and help those seagrasses regrow is needed. A special thanks to everyone who has done research on this so that I can make this presentation. I hope you enjoyed and have a great day.